Hey guys, it's Karlie.
Hey, it's Shamina. And
we're
emotional.
Oh.
I knew we were going to do it first.
What?
I said I was waiting to see if you would say it first.
And I was waiting to see if you were going to wait for me.
Today, we are talking about burnout, compassion fatigue, vicarious trauma, and tying all of that into possibly grief.
Wowzers.
Stay tuned to see how we do that.
Mm-hmm.
Before we jump in, we want to thank our patrons.
Therese Gallagher, Joanne Stewart, and Kevin Gallagher.
Thank you for your continued support. We usually mention this at the end, but also tell us how you like season 4. We want to hear from you guys this season. One of our goals and intentions is to get more engagement from all of you. So shoot us a message or send us a comment or a smiley face or something.
Slide into our DMs, baby. Slide in. We'll make it nice and smooth.
Karlie will, I won't.
I don't know how I'm gonna make it smooth, but okay.
So let's get emotional.
Are you ready?
Are you? Did we do that during our last one?
I think we usually do it at the end because we say, I don't know. I don't know. We're trying new things, new season, new year, new us, baby.
Interesting. I'm gonna be eating my dinner while we're doing this, so
some new things. See, some new things.
If that bothers you, but I'm hungry and I want to multitask. Before we jump into the topic, though, Karlie, I have a really funny story to tell you because I haven't talked to you in a little bit. So the other night, my partner had come to bed, and he always comes to bed a lot later than I do. So I usually wake up if he gets into bed or whatever. And I'm laying there, and I wake up. Well, let me backtrack. You know when you're dreaming and some type of noise is playing on the outside and it starts to be part of your dream or whatever. So your voice, I hear your voice, and I'm like, what is happening? I'm not on the phone. Am I dreaming? What's going on? I open my eyes, and it's our first episode of season 4 is playing on my partner's phone, and he's asleep, but he's just holding it, and it's falling on him, and I just hear you talking, and I'm like, man was just listening to our podcast at who knows what time, and he just fell asleep. So I took it and I turned his phone off or whatever. And then the next morning I was like, were you listening to the podcast last night? And he was like, yeah, I clicked on it. And then I don't know what happened. I just don't remember. And I was like, yeah, you fell asleep. I woke up to hearing Karlie's voice.
That is funny. That's funny.
It was.
I've been having, this past week, I've been having some crazy dreams. I don't know, man.
Vivid dreams.
Vivid and just weird. I don't know. One dream was, it was the road to go to from Brandon to Tampa, but it wasn't a road, it was a slide. And so you just went on it. But the thing about it was you had to have momentum or you would fall off because it was a really steep and had a twisty turn. And I remember being in the slide and there was traffic and it was going slow. And I was like, yo, I'm really nervous. I don't know if I'm going to make it. Because there was like two slides back, like next to each other going, and I could see people falling off of the slide next to me, like falling to the ground, dying because they weren't like getting, and I'm like, bruh, I don't know. And like, I guess I end up making it, but I Googled it and it said that means like something in your life is like coming to a closure and you're like starting something new. But bro, it was like a really, the fact that I still remember the dream, this happened like 4 days ago. And I was just like, that dream was intense. It was intense. I was like, oh, sure.
I've had a dream somewhat similar to that, but it's like driving, and I had this dream. It was like a bridge or even a road that's like higher than the skyway. Like you were just like all the way up there. And then we like fell off because there's like no barriers or anything, and like got this huge car accident because this massive ass bridge doesn't have any fucking barriers. And I was like, yo, what just happened? It was wild.
So if anyone knows about dreams, let us know. But yeah, so let's get into our topic today. But yeah, dreams are crazy.
So Karlie's always enthusiastically trying to get me to talk about more things in my life. So this is one of those episodes that doesn't deal with domestic violence. So that's something different, because usually that's all I talk about. But this is something with so let me kind of define some of these things. I think we all know what like burnout is, and we've all experienced that, whether it's in like school, work, relationships, just feeling very overwhelmed, overworked, not taking care of yourself, like those kinds of feelings, very stressed out all the time. But the other two things, compassion fatigue and vicarious trauma. So compassion fatigue, we use that term in like the therapy realm of basically kind of what it sounds like is like, I get really tired as a therapist, showing up in session, having empathy, being very present, and it can be very taxing and exhausting sometimes. And then the other part, vicarious trauma. So what that means is if we hear other people talking about traumatic events, we may hold on to that and we start to experience some like trauma symptoms, even though it hasn't happened to us. So as a therapist, I hear a lot of trauma all the time. And more recently, in the past couple of months, I've been noticing that like I'm taking that home with me, or my clients will talk about some type of event and I'm worried about that happening, or I'm feeling very triggered if something tied to that event, which lets me know like, hey, Shamina, you're taking that on and we need to like separate that out. So I brought this topic to Karlie because it's been on my mind the past couple of months, and it's been rough from like a therapy clinical perspective. This is like the time of year that we usually see a lot of people coming back to therapy because the holidays bring up a lot of trauma for people. And we've talked about this before, like in the last season. And I planned for it. I'm like anticipating this like, increase in stuff. And then it happens and I'm like drowning. I just took some time off last weekend just to be able to like reset, refocus. And that was huge for me. But okay, I'll stop talking now and let you speak because I could
go. I mean, I'm here to listen, but I think anyone who works in healthcare, mental health, all of that,
schools right now,
schools deal with all of it: burnout, compassion fatigue, vicarious trauma. And I think that I remember when I was in grad school, I had a professor in one of our classes tell us that to do this type of work, you have to have a porous heart. You have to be able to take it in and embrace it when you're with your clients, but you need to be able to let it go. And I think at the time, like being in school, I didn't like, you hear her, you're like, yeah, but you don't really, I think, understand the concept. And I think until I started at the nonprofit where I would work with people who potentially are coming in to be tested for HIV and not knowing their status. I think I dealt with a lot of vicarious trauma because I remember coming into work and just being like so heavy, feeling so heavy because I already was like nervous about how my day was going to go. And I could remember like, especially towards the end when I would get a test, like when it would be my turn to take a test of someone walking in, I remember not even like just going and getting the supplies. I would have to calm myself down of like, it's going to be okay, Karlie, it's going to be okay. Because I would immediately start to be like, oh my God, like what if they're positive? What if this doesn't go well? And I'll say like 9 times out of 10, it was fine. But just because it's fine doesn't mean that they're not coming at you with 100 million different emotions because they're so nervous. 9 times out of 10, they were fine, but also 9 times out of 10, they're coming at you crying, super like overwhelmed and just like all over the place. And you have to be the calm, cool, collected. And so I will say like that was really hard. And like you had said, and you know, if you're dealing with other things in other parts of your life and something with work, I think it's your like patience is very limited because you're very overwhelmed and all whole. And I think that's how it was for me. And like my relationship wasn't good. So when I would go home, I really wasn't getting that, you know, relaxation. And then I'm going to work and my work is stressful. And so like I think I reached burnout a lot quicker. And that's kind of when I was like, I don't know if I want to do social work anymore because I was just like, I cannot. And I tell you all the time, I tell my other friends are therapists, I don't know how you guys do it. I could never be a therapist because I know the work that you guys do and have to take on. And I know that I cannot do that. I know that I'd probably be crying with my clients in a session and they'd probably end up soothing me because I'd be like, that's just not fair, you know, like, so I've accepted that therapist will never be a job title of mine, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah. And it's not for everybody. And, you know, I think you brought up a good point of like, this isn't just like the therapy realm right now. I have a lot of clients who are teachers and they're feeling this way. I have a lot of clients who are in the healthcare field. They are certainly feeling this way. And I also think that, you know, we're starting to see kind of like these long-term effects of being in the pandemic and being in these roles, because I had a client I was talking with who's in the healthcare field and changed out of their current position into another one that was like less demand, less stress. And they were talking to me and they're like, Shamina, I'm so tired. Like, I don't have the motivation to do these things. And, you know, I want to take care of myself. I want to do this. I want to do that. And I was like, yeah, you've been working in the middle of a pandemic for 2 years. Like that takes a toll. And so from a mental health side, we're still in a freaking pandemic. And I think we're starting to see like more of the long-term effects of what this is having on like our healthcare workers, on our teachers, on our, you know, people in the mental health field. And I was just talking with my therapist last week that like nobody prepared us for this on like a mental health side, because I'm also going through a pandemic and I'm trying to show up for you while you're going through a pandemic on top of everything else. And I looked at her, I was like, they didn't teach us this shit in graduate school. Like, I don't know what to do. I need help. Like, we got to figure this out.
Well, it's funny that you bring up the pandemic because I literally was just talking to a friend today that in 2 months, it'll literally be 2 years that we've been in a pandemic. And I know a lot of people out there are like thinking that it's over, or, you know, they're acting like it's not, which to each their own. But at the end of the day, we are still in a pandemic. And I think me and you were talking, but I was talking to other people, like, you know, when the pandemic first happened. Oh, it was, I think the episode with your supervisor of how being in this pandemic has added, like, it's understandable why we're so much more tired and fatigued, because we've added so many more decisions that used to be just thoughtless prior to the pandemic. But now it's like, do I want to go to the grocery store? Do I want to risk that? Do I want to do this? And it's like, these are things now that we think about more than before, of just like, oh, I'm running to the grocery store, because it's this whole thing. Do I have my mask? You have to make sure you always have your mask, like, so it's adding a lot more thoughts. And so at the end of, like, even today, I'm like, I'm so tired. Like, this week has been so tiring for me, but I've been doing a lot more after work, and I'm also recovering from being sick. So I'm like, today I was just like, I am like done, put a fork in her, she's done. But it's just, and you brought up teachers. My mom's retired now, but she was a teacher. And towards the end, with everything that's changed, she would come home and just like cry, because they just don't really have any authority, and just the way that the school system is run is very defeating. It's very defeating.
Well, there's no support and resources for teachers. And I think it was like the start of, I want to say either this school year or maybe towards the end of last one, I don't know, but everybody, like, the school systems like went back to normal. Like, we operate normally. I think it was the start of this school year. They took away like the online option for learning. It was everybody's back in the classroom. This is what we're doing. And now we're back to normal. But then I had a client who they had a quarter of their kids absent in one day after returning from winter break, whether it was like sickness or just trying to take an extra day and preparing for the upcoming semester. But I was like, that's crazy. How do you teach when you have that many kids out?
Mm-hmm.
And then, everything, whatever. I could get on a whole tangent about
that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyways, so this topic is really near and dear to me because I see it a lot in my clients. I see it a lot in myself. I really struggle at times with being able to recognize it when it's first starting to happen. And I think this last time I let it like build up until like it was bad. It was to the point. What?
I was gonna ask, what are your signs of noticing that it's starting to happen?
So I think a big one is I get irritable. I don't want to do anything. Like, I just want to be on the couch and like, that's it. I normally do that, but I just, it's like even more. And I noticed this last time, at least, that I was thinking about things that had occurred in my clients' lives, but I was worrying about them for my life. And that was like a really big sign to me of like, this is not my own stuff. And like, what can I do with that? And I also get I get really tired when I was getting headaches. That was a huge one. It was like after every single workday, I'd have a headache, and it was a horrible, I've never had a migraine, but it would last for hours and hours and hours, and I couldn't get them to go away. And even trying to like start my workday, I started to get a headache, and I was like, this is not, I usually don't get headaches. Like, what's going on here? So that was like a big physical sign for me. And emotionally, I think I can notice some of the physical ones before I can notice the emotional ones of like withdrawing or not wanting to talk to people. I can remember, I think you were sick, but it was like last week. I don't think we like talked like all week. And I kept thinking like, oh, like I haven't talked to Karlie, I should call Karlie. And I was like, I can't talk to anybody right now. Like I don't have the capacity to even have a conversation. Or even when my partner was coming home and talking about his day, I was like, I tuned it out because I couldn't take anything else in. I was like, I can't be there for you. And he's a talker, so he would just talk and talk and talk. And I was like, I can't hold a conversation. And then I even noticed like things that I was watching on TV were too much for me. It was like too graphic, or it hit too close to home. And I'm really good at like discerning that stuff. I really love like, I started watching Euphoria, and anybody who's never seen it, super great show, but it's also very heavy and rich with a lot of like real life shit. And I had to stop watching it for a while because I was like, this is like really intense and I can't even handle watching this TV show. And I went back to like my comfort shows, or like, give me like the young adult, like love story. I just need something happy and upbeat and heartfelt. And that's it. Like, I don't need any other crap. And
Karlie shows.
Yes, Karlie shows. And it's never been that bad for me because usually I catch it, and I can remember like talking to my therapist and I was like, it's never been this bad. What's happening? And then I realized
I'm burnt out.
That, but it was, I had a therapy session, and then it was a couple days later. I think I was laying in bed, and when I wake up very early to feed my cats because they wake me up, and if I don't get up, I get pawed in the face. So just get up. And it takes me a minute to go back to sleep because my mind starts racing and all the just thoughts start. But I had this thought that my emotions were getting ramped up, not only because of what my clients were bringing and just, feeling burnt out with work, but I was also starting to experience like moments of grief. My grandmother's birthday, I think we talked about this during our last episode, was this week. And I know that, the birthday, the death day, those are the two like big triggers for me when it comes to grief. And I didn't realize how much of an impact that was having on top of everything else that I was feeling. And I think once I identified, I was like, my grief is exacerbating everything else that I'm feeling. It stopped. And it wasn't as intense, or it wasn't as overwhelming, because I knew what it was. I was like, this is my grief coming up.
Acknowledge it.
And my, the birthday came, and that was a hard day. And then it was like, once that day came, I was good. And, now I have more energy. I've been being very intentional about like separating, this is not my client, this is my stuff, this is my client stuff, like letting that go and taking time like in between sessions, because I see people back to back to back. And so it's like, I have to jump from one session to the other. Sometimes I don't even have time to like go to the bathroom or like catch a breath because I don't want to be late. So I'm like, oh my God, I have to go in. And now I've been like taking a couple of breaths before I go in and telling myself like, I created these jars to hold, like literal jars that hold my stuff and my client stuff. And I've written like some things down to be able to like put it in the jar, and then I'll destroy it. And so I'm mentally kind of doing that like in between session. Like I'm taking my deep breaths and I'm imagining like these things that my clients have told me they're going into their jars, and I can put my thing in my jar. And that's been really helpful of like grounding me and allowing me to like have that moment of separation. And I actually had a friend FaceTime me the other day, and she was like, yeah, like my therapist used to tell me if it was like really close and I was there, she'd be like, hang on, I need 5 minutes. Just give me 5 minutes. And she was like, I don't know what she did in those 5 minutes, but she compartmentalized, like she put it somewhere. And I was like, that's a really good idea. And, obviously the time is valuable for my clients, but like, if I can't separate that, or I can't compartmentalize enough, then I'm no good in your session.
Yeah. It's funny because when you were speaking in the very beginning, talking about like the TV shows and stuff, obviously that hit really home for me, because during my breakup and everything, I think I took myself so close to the edge of trying to make it work that when I had finally accepted, I was super burnt out, because I remember, it's so crazy, and it's coming up on a year of me making this big decision. And I think because the year is coming up, I've been thinking about it a little bit, and I just remember that so clearly because it was a session that I had with my therapist that pushed me to make that decision. But I remember it was a hard session because I was being real with her, but I was being real with myself. And it was really hard to be so raw and honest out loud of me pretty much telling her, like, I can't get out of bed. Like, I remember being like, I can't, like, I literally have to pull myself to go do something, you know, and like it's just so crazy like how different it is now, but it's hard. And like I think the hardest part is acknowledging it to yourself of like, oh my God, you know, because you don't ever want to have to admit that to yourself. It's like a defeating thing. But ever since then, like, you know, I think for that time, it took a long, long time. Like, you know, I could only watch shows that I knew would be a happy ending. I could only watch movies that I knew I could not risk potential of anything bad happening because I would just take it on. I couldn't do that. And like, I think now there are some days where I'm kind of like, ooh, like I need to kind of back up and I'll watch like my comfort shows. But it's a huge, I think, difference from what it was a year ago of like now I'm trying new shows and I'm like, ooh, and I acknowledge and I think that's a good thing of like, you know what, today's kind of heavy for me. I'm not maybe sure why it's heavy, but I'm not gonna watch those shows today. I'm gonna go to my comfort shows today. And I think that that's okay to do, like you said, as long as you're able to recognize and you don't push yourself too far. But yeah, I just think about that because, and I think that that's probably why, like, I will say, like you had mentioned of like not really being interested in like talking to people. And I don't know if I would go like that far. I think it's more of I've just learned to enjoy my alone time. And so I'm like, oh, do I want to? I know this was going to be a long phone call, or are we really going to have anything to say? So I think of it kind of like that. But yeah, I think like knowing that this time is starting to like be around that time of me knowing but not knowing, and then in February is when I made that big kick that like some things are kind of I guess resurfacing a little bit, but yeah, it's just
And it's crazy how like moments in time hold emotion for us. Whether it's anniversaries, birthdays, death days, the decision to like leave your partner and kick him out of your place, like all of those things. It's just so crazy because I see it, you know, so much from like a clinical perspective of like, oh, okay, the anniversary is coming up, like let's ramp up the self-care, let's ramp up these things. And then in my own life, like I recognize it and I know it, but I think part of me is like, you're good, you're fine, like you've handled it, like it's been years now, like you know what to expect. And then every time it comes up, I'm like, this is my grief, and these are like my emotions because this day means something to me. And I think I'm noticing that I'm minimizing like the impact of it because it's been almost 3 years now, and it's like, you know how to deal with this stuff. But now like my grief has kind of shifted. It doesn't happen all the time, but there are like these pockets of pain on these anniversary days, and they're much stronger, and I don't anticipate the strength or the impact because I've been feeling this way for a couple of months. And even my partner, he's like, you're not, like you're off, and I know that you're off. And I would look at him and I'd be like, I'm just not okay, like this, I'm not okay.
Do you think that the pockets of, you know, that you're talking are stronger because you're trying to minimize it? Like, do you think that maybe if you would just, and I'm not saying, I don't mean that in like a condescending way, but if you would just accept it when you're even like acknowledge it / accept it of, hey, this is grief, do you think that they would maybe balance out a bit? Do you get what I'm saying? Like, do you think that they're as strong as they are because you try to downplay it and think that, oh, it's been 3 years, I should be able to go on with this day and it not be a big event, quote unquote?
Yes, but no. Like I know the days are gonna be something, but I I think and this was like the big light bulb that went off, is when things are that heavy for me and when things are impacting me that much, like, yes, my work is part of it, but I'm pretty good at being able to like push that aside and leave it at work. And so I think I'm trying to realize that it's more than just what I'm cognitively aware of, because like I know that the grief is there, but then I've like in the past year I've noticed like these patterns of things get really intense for Shamina, and Shamina's like, why is everything so intense? And I know that the birthday or the anniversary or whatever is coming up, but I don't think that it's having as big of an impact on me. And then now that I've realized, like, when things are really heavy, it's probably your grief coming back up too. I think the awareness piece is part of like my minimization, because I didn't connect the two until like a couple of days ago, that my grief seems to exacerbate everything. And it's like my world is like falling apart kind of thing. And then once I was like, oh, this is my grief and this is how it feels now. And I think moving forward, I'll be able to like plan and anticipate better for this stuff and have these moments of like, Shamina, why is everything so hard right now? Oh, this is probably like your grief coming back up.
And I will say that definitely takes a lot of practice. And like Shamina obviously went to school and stuff, and even she still struggles with it. So I think that if you are starting to feel burnt out or just, just something off, maybe just try to reflect, like take a few minutes, take a few deep breaths, and just think like, did something happen around this time? Or whatever it could be, of like, am I sad? Or because sometimes I struggle acknowledging my emotions and knowing what I'm feeling, and sometimes I'll journal and I'll just say like, I'm feeling a lot right now and I don't know exactly what it is, but I know that there's something heavy with me right now, and so I think first just being able to acknowledge that we're feeling something is a step to then being able to figure out what is it that I'm feeling. Cause like, I still don't know. And like, honestly, I feel like I just had a breakthrough in this episode of like, you know what? It's coming up to a year. And I think that I'm like Shamina in the sense of like, I knew that a year was coming up, but I'm like you, of like, I should be over. In my head, I'm like, I should be over it. It shouldn't affect me like this because it's been almost a year. But obviously, like, I don't get to tell myself how I feel. And
yeah, definitely. And we drive ourselves crazy and we like work ourselves even more if we can't pinpoint it. If I had $1 for every time my client's like, I don't know why I feel this way, I would be so rich right now. It's not even funny. And, they're like, I've been trying to figure it out. And I'll ask a couple of questions, or I'm like, well, remember like this happened to you, or like this was going on, or you just went through like all of these things, and they're like, oh yeah, that would make sense. Yeah. And I think that's a really big piece, is that sometimes we don't know, and sometimes we can't put the pieces together and figure it out, but we get so frustrated because logically it doesn't make sense. There's nothing that directly happened that should impact my mood, or it wasn't like this huge traumatic event that occurred. I don't know why I feel this way. This doesn't make sense to me. So we push it away, we reject it, we don't want it. But we feel that way for a reason. And I think we've talked at length in different episodes about how like our bodies are a form of communication. And when things change and we aren't our usual selves, there's something off, whether we know what it is or not. But we choose not to listen to it because we want to figure it out. We want it to make sense. But like, sometimes you're sad, or sometimes you just have a bad day, or you have grief, or you're just feeling off. Like, who knows? But there is a reason, whether we know it or not. And taking comfort in times when you don't know the reason.
And just like accepting it, because like you said, of like, I think sometimes when we don't know where it's coming from, we're like, you're not coming in, but it's coming. It's gonna come. And like, one thing that I just thought of too while you were talking was also the holidays just passed. Like, I think we're, your body could still kind of like, I personally feel like I still have not gotten really yet much of a break since the holidays. Like, I'm still looking for that weekend where I can just be a couch potato and not do anything. But like for me, January is a big month. I have 3 people in my family who have birthdays in January. So literally every weekend I'm doing something for birthdays. And of course, the one weekend that I didn't, I was sick. And so I was like trying to recover, but I'm like, so also remember, like, it's still January and we're still like, I think settling back into like the rush of the holidays. And for me, I am like waiting for a day where I don't have to do nothing.
Yeah.
Because that just sounds really good. And I've not gotten there yet, but I know it'll come. I know it'll come.
Yeah, definitely. And I was thinking like we're coming off like that holiday high and
Yep.
trying to like settle into January. And what you were saying of like I'm waiting for like this perfect opportunity. Sometimes we wait for a really long time and you have to create it, which that's why like last weekend I took like a long weekend and one of my clients was like, oh, are you gonna like go anywhere or do anything? And I was like, no, probably not. And I went to the library. I got 4 different books. I've read 3 of them in less than a week because I just wanted to sit and read and enjoy like the cold weather. And that was so restorative because I didn't have to like go places or do things or see people or talk to people. I could just do whatever I wanted. And I created that for myself because otherwise I just would have kept working.
Yeah, it's true. And yeah, I totally agree that sometimes you just have to like create it and force it. I think me right now, I struggle with like the dumbest things. Like, I don't even know, but I'll like end up doing the dumbest stuff. And I'm like, why can't I just freaking sit on the couch and not do anything? Like, I'll be like, oh, all of a sudden, like last night, I was like, I want banana chocolate chip muffins. And I didn't have chocolate chips. So I had to go to the store. And then I was like, this turned into a whole thing. I could have just chilled on the couch, but now I'm running around at 8:00 at night because I want these freaking muffins. They're delicious though. And then, like, I'm just like, where are the days when after work I didn't do nothing? Now I'm like doing this and this and like, yeah, it's nice. But at the same time, I'm like how you were saying of like, I'm starting to be like, okay, like I just want to, because I'm starting to get like tired.
It's exhausting. And I think my biggest like takeaway is like listening to my body and what is she doing?
She's like rubbing her face against the floor. Blue.
and like choosing to do something about it because I knew I was feeling this way for a while. And I was like, it'll be fine. Like, I'll just push through. And I think that's what we do a lot of the times is like, we just wait. We wait for things to calm down or die down. We wait to have time off. We wait for this, we wait for that. And then we get stuck in like this cycle and it only keeps going and going and going and the wheel keeps turning. And so I chose to like get off the wheel. I was like, nah, you can keep going, but like, I'm gonna stand here and I'm gonna be stable for a second because this is hard. And go ahead.
Sorry, I was gonna say, I don't know if you had it because I know you're not really like on social media, but I sent you a TikTok the other day. And I don't know if you watched it, but it was like this girl of like, can we like be okay with the 9 to 5? Because like obviously everyone knows I'm not okay with the 9 to 5, but that's like what I work now. But she was just saying like, when you go on social media, which I try not to do as much anymore, because she's like, when you go on social media, everyone like makes you feel bad if you're working the 9 to 5 and you have like a set schedule, and you're not out traveling and doing something. And I felt like I relate to that so much because like at the end of the day, like she was like, why can't we romanticize enjoying like the weekends and doing something on the weekend, and then after work having like dinner with friends and stuff. But if you go on social media, like no one supports that. Everyone just supports like quitting your job and traveling the world, which like, yeah, I'm also all for, but realistically, like that's not sustainable. And so then if you can't sustain that life, social media makes you feel bad. And so I saw that. I was like, yeah, like I'm going to stop like making myself feel bad and like why can't I have that life? Because I have a pretty good life. Like I get to work from home. I don't have to go driving all the time. I have friends that live very close, so I get to see them. But I think social media on top of the pandemic and all, I think it leads to people burning out quicker because they're in their heads like, oh, my life's not great. And so then they're thinking that their life's not great. And then when they do hit a moment that is difficult, it's even heightened because they're already saying, oh, my life is shit and da da da. So then when a minor inconvenience happens, it's this big thing. And I think it's leading to burnout a lot quicker too, because so, I mean, that was another reason why I've decided to like decrease my social media time, because I just can tell like it starts to like stress me out because it's just like, that's not realistic. Like, I'm glad, I don't know how you're getting to travel every day and not go to work. Like, teach me your ways. But like for the average American, that's just not a thing.
Yeah. I was thinking about that the other day. I was like scrolling and I thought, okay, this is like what social media is now. Like our generation came into, like, we grew up with the technology. It wasn't like, oh, we already have it and now you get to use it. Like what are they? Gen Z, the new ones?
Gen Z, yeah.
And I think a lot about how much has changed. Like we see ads and we see this and we see that, and just even like the content that we post on social media has shifted since like, we first joined like Facebook in 2009, or like Instagram was a thing, and it's about like status and power and how my facade that I want to show you instead of I want to share my life, I want to connect. Like, yeah, it does do that, but it's taken on like this whole reality of
now people just post, like you said, like the high parts of their life when they go and travel. And it's funny because I think I downloaded Instagram like senior year of high school, something like that. And a couple nights ago, I was having dinner with some friends and we were going on each other's page, like roasting each other. But like the things we were posting were like what you were saying, of like so realistic, of like just like your everyday. Like my first post on Instagram was cookie dough covered Oreos. It was me making them and then them out the oven. Those were my two first posts on Instagram. Okay. Now people posting on Instagram is like them traveling to Europe, but they don't post all the other stuff when they're home, like they're only posting all of these good travel or whatever, which cool, that's good, but it's just not realistic for everyone else watching. So then everyone else who sees it is like, damn, I want to go to Europe.
Yeah, it's not, it's just like this best version of ourselves, not like the more realistic. And even if you post the realistic stuff, you don't get as much attention or attraction to it. And I think it's crazy. Like when I did my jar activity, it was like a therapy homework assignment, so I wanted to share it, and I was like, I hope this helps people, and that was my intention behind sharing it. I got significantly less engagement than I did if I like posted a picture where like I'm all dolled up or I'm going somewhere, I'm doing something. And it's heartbreaking because, as a therapist, it's like, I want to normalize these things. I want to talk about these things. And like, I even had a moment, like I post some like therapy stuff on my own personal page in the hopes that like somebody will connect to it or it'll be really helpful for them. And there was this one day where I was like, does anybody even care? Like, does it matter what I'm posting? Does it help anybody? And I had somebody comment on like a story I posted and they were like, I love this. Like, thank you so much for sharing this. And I was like, oh, this is nice. Like people care, but there's such a discrepancy between the two. And it only like perpetuates the cycle of, if I want to feel accepted by, my peers or my community, I have to post the things that they want to see, which may not be what I want to post. Well,
not only that too, but I feel like also like people commenting, I feel like is not like, I feel like they only comment, I don't know, it's just not like a usual typical thing, unless again it's something like you said, ecstatic or things like that, but not
Well,
many people.
it takes time. And I think like our attention spans are so short that we don't want to take the time to stop and like say something, because we just want to keep scrolling and scrolling and see the next thing. And like light bulb. I also wonder if that's why, we don't get a lot of engagement on the podcast, is because then you have to go to our social media and engage with us, or you have to like comment below instead of just going and seeing the next video, because we don't have the attention span for those things anymore.
Pay attention, people. No. But yeah, I think it's just in general of like, you have to like really grab people's attention enough that they're so involved that they are willing to do that extra step. Because again, like you said, we are born in the age where we saw technology develop, but like even the people younger than us, like we expect it at the snap of our fingers, and like I know that even sometimes I'm like that, because and I was talking to my therapist about this, of like, even sometimes I'll be watching a show and it's not entertaining or immediate satisfaction enough for me that I end up bringing up my phone. And she was like, yeah, it's because you're looking for like that immediate satisfaction and all of that. And so like, that's another reason why I'm trying to reduce the amount of phone time, because I'm like, am I really getting to that point to where like I expect something so quickly that like when a TV show is not giving me the result I want right away, I'm like, oh, okay, like I'll just scroll on my phone until I see something good happen, and then I'm like, oh, what happened, And I catch myself doing that often.
Or even like commercials.
Oh yeah.
Oh, there's a commercial on my phone. Oh, there's a commercial. So I
like, and then you're on your phone and you went through a whole thing and it's another commercial again, and you're like, damn it.
Yep. So I challenge myself, because like I use all the streaming apps. It's like 90 seconds of commercials, usually just 90 seconds. And we don't have the ability to like just sit there and watch them. So there'll be times where like I'll hide my phone or like put it away, and I'm like, sit here and you watch these freaking commercials.
You're going to sit here and you're going to enjoy it. Yeah, but like, and it's just so funny because how much it's changed. Like back in the day, like dial up. I remember like after school waiting to like AOL, like, yeah. If I had to wait that long now, are you kidding?
I know.
Hell no.
I was talking to a client today, and they're like, you remember like when AIM came out? And I was like, oh, AIM, yeah, I remember that shit. And they're like, and like when texting was like becoming a thing, and I was like, yeah, I remember. Like we couldn't even like text on our phones because it would like cost more money. And we had to be like off the phone by like 9:00. And then it was like, oh, well, now you can get like a texting plan so you can text people. And then it was like, oh no, that's included, it's free. And it's like, that is so crazy that even existed.
Do you want to know, I think texting started to become a thing for me like late middle school, early high school. My mom would not buy the unlimited texting. There were several occasions, and to this day, I don't know how I sent that many text messages. She would get $300 in charges from me texting. And she was like, Karlie, who are you texting? And you need to stop. It would be like 15,000 texts. And like, that's when it started becoming big. So like the moment I left school, I would say, hey, what are you doing? And it's like, oh, I'm in the car line, like just left school, or like whatever it was. And we would text until I don't know how I had the energy for that, because now I could never. But yeah, my mom would be like, who are you talking? And my mom would be like, you have to pay this. And I'm like, how? I don't have a job. Like I'm in 8th grade, but I remember
that they'd give you like the breakdown, like how many text messages you sent out, how many you got in, and like our parents would be like, this is outrageous, like why are you doing this? I couldn't even imagine what it looks like for kids now.
Oh, I know Well, because they start like texting at like 6, but yeah, I still laugh about that. My mom probably doesn't laugh, but I can remember like getting out of basketball practice and she'd be like, you went $300 over on texting? And I'm like, I guess, like, I don't know. And like, I can just remember, but I think like that was like, I feel like high school and like these apps or like texting and these apps started like in high school for us.
Yeah.
I didn't have a Facebook until senior year of high school.
You were late on the feed. I transitioned. It was freshman year of high school, so we made the jump from like MySpace to Facebook, and it was like, oh, everybody's going to Facebook. Let's see. And then that was basically the end of MySpace at that time.
I never had a MySpace, but I remember my cousin, who I used to hang out with a lot, had a MySpace. And legit part of our hanging out would be me watching her redoing her MySpace of like her top and like making music in her back. And like that was us hanging out like, oh, make it this. And like, I never had one though. So I would just watch her and give her ideas on how to do it. And like, oh, this person owns this pic.
Oh, I miss growing up. Now it's just too complicated and there's just too much shit to deal with. But I want the of the top 10, top 8.
Well, the what?
Top 8, top 4, whatever.
Oh, well, I'm coming up on my 10-year high school reunion. And so that whole discussion is starting and I'm getting pictures, like old pictures from high school. And I'm just like, oh my God, like seeing me, I'm like, I'm so like tiny. Like you could just tell like my face hadn't matured yet, I guess you could say. And I'm just like, or like when I had braces, oh my goodness. Oh gosh, I'm seeing these pictures and I'm like, this is gonna bring up some memories.
But it feels like it was like just yesterday. Like it's
not
a decade, like, I can't be that old, and it's crazy.
It is so, I don't know how am I 27? I don't know. Like, and I'm going to be 28 in like 4 months. Where did this past, no joke, this past year, 2 years has flown by for me. Flown by. What? We need to wrap up because now this is ridiculous.
Now we're getting emotionally full.
I need to go eat.
All of this to say, pay attention to your emotions. It's okay to take breaks, to schedule breaks, to not know why you're feeling what you're feeling, or even if you do, just embracing it, giving it like a really big hug instead of pushing it away, because when we hug it and when we embrace it, it goes away so much quicker. But we don't want to feel it, so we push it away. So do with that what you will. Are you feeling full yet?
I'm freaking overflowing.
Okay. If not, consider this. Tell us how you are, like how you recognize feeling burnt out, and what do you do when that happens? We want it.
And I'm curious if you not being able to identify your emotions / feelings makes it harder for you to acknowledge burnout and what that does for you.
Like if you don't acknowledge your feelings?
Yeah, like if you struggle to acknowledge your feelings and take that step back. Because I think like you were saying, of so many people want to push it away, but I think we want to push it away because we don't want to feel these hard feelings because we don't know how to. Been there, still doing it, and we don't want to, so we try to just tuck it away, and then it surprise.
Yeah, that's what it does, and it makes that sound too. So stay tuned for more tips and tricks on like how to identify this stuff and how to increase that awareness, because that's the most important piece, is being aware of it. Then you can do something about it or choose not to. That's cool too.
Mm-hmm.
So we will see you all same time
Next
same place
week.
next week.
Same time, same spot, same.
Bye.
Bye.